Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday. When it happened, some people chuckled, others cringed. Talking about Ashley Madison. That's the dating website for people who are married who want to have clandestine affairs. Well, Ashley Madison hummed along there for about 6 or 7 or 8 years, but then the bottom fell out when the website was hacked, and it appears now that intimate details of 32 million users are now out there for the public to see. 7 years worth of credit card and payment transaction details. The leak contains everything from email addresses of Ashley Madison users right down to their physical addresses, phone numbers, employers, credit card numbers, a devastating amount of information that can ruin millions of lives, even if the act of using the site rested on shady moral ground. What does this mean out in the real world? We're going to talk about it with two noted divorce attorneys, Robert Schwartz and Maurine Pontrelli from Dickinson Wright. They've been on this program before. We were talking about divorce and the book you guys wrote on divorce, kind of a how-to and a guide how to navigate the crazy waters of divorce. But this is something a little bit different, although you talked about it in your last visit here, that this social media stuff is just potential poison, right, Robert?
It's become a kind of a out-of-control vehicle for people to cruise the net. They think that they have some anonymity. They think that they're going to have some degree of privacy. I think the last time I was here, I was talking about this phenomenon of people hooking up on the social websites with their high school sweethearts,
yep,
or old flames, and you know, we've actually seen that quite a bit. The level of Ashley Madison, though, has taken this thing to a whole different level than anything we've seen before.
Had you or Maurine seen clients come into your office where Ashley Madison had been part of the equation?
I have not. I've heard about it, but I haven't actually seen it in any of the cases.
Would that suggest that it's maybe not as widespread as we might be led to believe, that this is a pretty small universe of people? I mean, it's 32 million, but...
that's a lot of people, but
yeah.
I don't know that that suggests it's not that widespread. I think that it's just been so basically behind the scenes that spouses haven't really realized what was involved.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen actually clients coming in having used the Ashley Madison website, but we certainly see clients coming in who are, as Robert says, hooking up with individuals with respect to social media sites, Facebook, utilizing the social media to be able to communicate with individuals, versus what we used to see is people would go out to a bar and meet people, and now the internet is becoming that vehicle by which people meet each other or try to rekindle previous relationships with one another. That's
interesting. That may suggest that Ashley Madison, you may not, in this new world we're in with Tinder and all these hookup websites, you may not need an Ashley Madison anymore.
You may not need it, but it's interesting that people feel like they're safe if they utilize a facility or a website like Ashley Madison. So they go on there thinking there's some degree of privacy that they get, and now what Ashley Madison and the hacking has done is it tells you that there isn't any privacy on the internet.
It's really instructive, because even people who said, well, Ashley Madison users had it coming. But then I read an op-ed that I wanted to share a little bit with you and just get your take on it, just as citizens of the world. They said, everyone has something to hide. We all have a right to privacy. Poking the finger at people that appear in Ashley Madison's database isn't anyone's right, even if they've committed a sin by your standard. Now here's the part that got my attention. How would you feel about your Facebook messages being open to the world? The contents of your computer's documents folder, or your Snapchat pictures? Well, that then changes it, right?
Well, it does and it doesn't, because remember, Ashley Madison, their hook was to appeal to a certain segment of the population. I mean, their motto was, life is short, have an affair.
Yes, so, I mean, they made no bones about it. They were very direct.
And so they're appealing to, obviously, married people, or people who are in long-term relationships, so they're not just appealing to the individual, the single person who's out there looking to meet somebody. I mean, they targeted a specific audience, and apparently they were pretty successful, even if a lot of the names are bogus, as they're claiming. You're still talking about 32 million names or people that supposedly had something to do with the site.
Maurine, when you see clients come in who their partners have been unfaithful, has it been your experience that generally the partner who's been on the other side of it, who's been scorned or has, you know, the affair has happened to, that they're aware something was up?
You know, I think anybody who may have been utilizing even the Ashley Madison website, there probably were some problems in the marriage to begin with, and there are those signs, and you know that there might be something out there, but you're afraid to really either ask or to try to find out the details because you're hoping that what you don't know won't hurt you. And usually we find that they suspected it. The spouse who wasn't having the affair suspected that something was going on. When you have, you know, 2 phones, when you have credit cards.
I was going to ask you, what are the things that, that kind of, what are those things, those tangible things that kind of rear their head during this type of behavior? Well,
some of those are you're out of town a lot, have to work late. You may find that there are duplicate phones. Why do we have 2 phones that we're utilizing? Or they may not even know about a second phone that exists.
This is a Tiger Woods stuff.
Credit card charges that show up that you wonder, what's this charge for? Expenses for hotels, flowers, things that come in that you think, I didn't get them, so where were they being spent? So usually there are some other signs.
You know, the text messages and the email accounts are a treasure trove.
You can get all that as an attorney, right?
Oh, absolutely. We can subpoena from the internet companies, the history of the email accounts. We can get from the cell phone companies not only the records that show the date, the time that the phone call was made, but we can actually get the location, the tower that the phone call came from.
To put somebody in a place.
Oh, and we can actually, and we have experts that we use in some of these cases where we can actually give them the information, and they can sit down and on a map, they will chart for you all the various towers around town. So if the spouse thinks, well, the husband's at work and calling me from the office on their cell phone, meantime, they're way across town.
I'm going to digress here. Maybe you can answer a question. You just raised an issue that with this Tom Brady thing. When he destroyed his phone on this Deflategate, are those recoverable even though he destroyed the phone?
To some extent, the text messages can be recoverable. It all depends on how they were erased. If they were done in a very professional way, they probably are not recoverable.
I didn't think we'd get into Deflategate today, but you got my attention on this. I want to go back. I think we did a story with you earlier this week on this whole Ashley Madison. This will bring you up to speed. Just for those of you who may be wondering, who's Ashley Madison? Well, here you go.
If you are trying to find and go through and say, I want to see if my spouse is cheating, you probably need to have a conversation with your spouse in the first place.
About 32 million people now learning that the hard way. This after the website Ashley Madison, an online dating site aimed at people looking to have extramarital affairs, was hacked. The hackers have posted things like customer names, login details, and addresses on the dark web, a portion of the internet not easily searched by Google. Now that millions of cheaters may be outed, you might wonder if this will have any effect on the divorce rate. Family law attorney Maurine Pontrelli with the Dickinson Wright law firm says not right away.
I'm not sure if overall it will actually increase divorce rates, but maybe what it does do is it helps bring it out in the open so that where before this was something that people were trying to do without anybody knowing about it.
If divorce is a result of the use of the site, Pontrelli says it will have little legal effect since Arizona is a no-fault state, meaning if a spouse cheats, he or she will not be punished with less property or money.
The way that it might affect divorces is with the fact that if you've spent money for a non-community purpose, like on this website, there may be that possibility to show that there's been some community waste and the ability of one spouse maybe to have a more unequal distribution of assets.
Well, my mom used to say, don't lie because they'll find out the truth anyway. So I want to ask you about this, Maurine. Even people, when you get people into a divorce proceeding, you're representing either side, This Ashley Madison stuff, you could find out about it anyway as an attorney, right?
Exactly. You would find out about it anyway because it shows up on credit card charges. We may ask them under oath. Have you ever been on Match.com, any of the other dating websites? Have you been on Ashley Madison? And all of that is going to come out in the divorce anyway because we might be able to utilize that. It might be relevant in custody issues. It might also be relevant for purposes of community waste. Has the one spouse spent money for a non-community purpose, which Ashley Madison would certainly be a non-community purpose. And so we would get that information in the course of a divorce in any event.
You know, I always thought this kind of thing, let's just say everybody, the parties involved in Ashley Madison who decide to have an affair, it strikes me as incredibly reckless beyond the affair part that you're trusting that this person might not go off the deep end and say, well, I want to have a further relationship and I'm going to call your wife if we don't keep seeing each other, or whatever it is.
Right.
Right?
It's the fatal attraction that you have.
I think you're inviting all kinds of mashugana into your world with this.
Well, and not only that, I mean, all of the diseases that potentially can be transmitted as well. And so it's incredibly reckless to be involved in affairs such as, it's reckless to be involved maybe in affairs at all, but to be involved in these dating websites where you don't know, or fair websites like this one where you really don't know the individuals that you're being involved with, and how reckless that can be and how detrimental that can be to the family as well.
Robert, I was going to ask you.
Let me just add one thing to what Maurine said. You know, just think about, here you go on a website, you meet somebody that you really don't know other than through some posting. You manage to meet up with them, and next thing you know, there's a whole bunch of videotapes floating around of your encounter. And then you get a letter or a phone call or an email that says, you know, if you don't want your wife or kids to see this, maybe you need to do something. And I mean, it's so ill-advised.
Does that happen as well, just in the regular world?
Absolutely, it happens in the regular world. Yeah, and that's with people you know and trust.
Now, I'm going to ask you to step away from the divorce lawyer hat and put on just the lawyer hat. 2 Canadian firms on Friday filed $500 million class action lawsuits against the company that runs Ashley Madison after the group's data was breached. 30-some million members were exposed. They're saying that that this was reckless on the part of the company to ever allow or have this information come out because of a hack, and they're seeking damages. Is that going to bear fruit or not?
Well, first of all, I haven't seen their sign-up documents, but I'm assuming that they do. The only way people are going to sign up for these sites is with some assurance of privacy and anonymity. So if that's the case, sure, I think there is a very viable claim for them not having proper firewalls or other protections in place. I mean, if memory serves, you know, Target got hacked.
Right.
And I think Target wound up settling with the people who got hacked.
So a hack is not an act of God. It's not something where the company goes, hey, look, we did everything we could and these guys still got in. That's not good enough. You know,
I'm not an expert in it, but I do believe that there are measures that can be taken to protect any site against anything. But then on the other hand, now you read the IRS got hacked, that, you know, the Defense Department got hacked. The government's been hacked. So the question is, did they take reasonable steps that a reasonable company would take to protect,
that will be the defense,
to protect these people? And if somebody decides, hey, they did everything that they reasonably could do, nobody could anticipate this level of sophistication, then they probably won't be liable. But that's a factual question.
We'll leave it there for now. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back with Robert Schwartz and Maurine Pontrelli. They are divorce attorneys with Dickinson Wright. We're also later in the program going to talk about this Brittany Griner, the Mercury star, her divorce proceedings with her partner of just about a month, Glory Johnson. And she is pregnant, Glory Johnson, as you know, and this raises all kinds of interesting legal questions. But because they're a same-sex couple, are the legal issues any different than a heterosexual couple? We'll talk about that and more when we come back on Newsmaker Sunday. Back with divorce attorneys Robert Schwartz and Maurine Pontrelli of the firm Dickinson Wright. They've been at this, Robert's been at it for more than 40 years. Maurine, you've been at this for more than... What?
30.
30. Yes. You guys have pretty much seen it all. However, in this last, what would you say, last 7, 8 years, all of the social media stuff, Ashley Madison, you've gotten a whole new dynamic in this now.
That's true. I mean, the way people used to meet before is, remember, you would place those personal ads in the newspaper and read the newspaper.
New Times had the back page, right.
Or, you know, then you would go out to bars, or you'd go out to minglings with individuals, and now you have it right in your own house that you can meet people through the internet. And so having that social media outlet has greatly increased the ability for people to meet each other, people to have affairs, people to do things that we would never, ever have seen 30 years ago.
One of the things I didn't talk to you about is in this Ashley Madison data breach, hacking 32 million subscribers to the cheating website. Robert, because we're a no-fault state in Arizona, first of all, describe what no fault means when it comes to divorce. And is there anything in this Ashley Madison, if it came up in one of your cases, that would tip the scales in favor of one side or the other?
All right, well, so no fault until 1973, Arizona was a fault state. What that means, and there are still several states in the country that are fault states. So what that means is that in order to obtain a divorce, you have to have a ground. And the ground has to be either physical cruelty, mental cruelty, abandonment. So there needs to be some basis for the divorce. In Arizona and many of the other states, there's no fault required now. So what that means is all you have to allege is that the marriage is broken. In our state, it's called irretrievably broken. I don't want to be married anymore. And if that's
one side or both.
One side or both. And actually, if there's a little twist in the law. If somebody alleges that the marriage is broken and the other spouse doesn't believe it, you could actually ask for a trial, not to a jury, but to the judge on that issue. You almost never, ever see it, but in 42 years I have done it, where you go to court and you claim to the judge, you know what, we may be having problems, but I don't really think our marriage is broken. I think we can salvage it, and I think we should stay together. It's very difficult to prove to a judge, but you could do it.
Wow, I was not aware that was a possibility.
Yeah, it is possible. I mean, you never see it. But so it's a fait accompli generally that if one party wants a divorce, they're going to get it.
So, in the case of Ashley Madison, if that were found out, that a spouse was cheating on Ashley Madison and you were dividing up community property or spousal support or support for the kids, could something like that that's egregious where, you know, it doesn't look good for the party that engaged in it, does that tip the scales or not?
Well, remember, judges are people. Judges are human beings, and even though they're supposed to be totally impartial, sometimes they're not that impartial. And the only time that we can bring up that kind of information in a case, because it is no fault, would be if it goes to something like what Maurine referred to before, waste. So what is waste? Well, waste is, you know, Ashley Madison is pretty expensive. From what I've read, I mean, there were people who were spending thousands and thousands of dollars to stay on this website.
And if it's community property, that's not just the man's who's cheating, it's his wife's money too. 50
cents of every one of those dollars belongs to the other spouse.
Right.
So, yeah, that's an issue. The other thing is, when it comes to custody sometimes, if somebody is supposed to be with the kids, but yet, you know, they dumped them off on a babysitter or put them in daycare to run around and meet with somebody on the side, that can be an issue. It can also be a judgment issue. I mean, what kinds of things has somebody been exposed to? Lastly, there is something called spousal torts. And so just for instance, and we have had cases like this over the years, one spouse gives the other spouse a venereal disease, herpes or something else. Well, you know,
damages.
And Ashley Madison could come into play.
Right.
Who have you been with?
Exactly.
You know, the wife comes in the office and says, I don't know where I got this. And now you find out that the husband was on the website and you track down all the people that he had to communicate with.
Judge wouldn't look very kindly on that. I want to get to the Brittany Griner, the Phoenix Mercury star, in a same-sex marriage for only 30 days with another WNBA star, Glory Johnson. Let's just take you back, and then I want to get your take on this, how the law views a same-sex divorce. Take a look.
So you understand that Ms. Johnson is indicating that she needs $20,000 in spousal maintenance for a 28-day marriage. Are you asking the court to deny that request?
Yes.
WNBA star Brittany Griner spent the afternoon not on the basketball court, but in divorce court. She doesn't believe her soon-to-be ex-wife, Glory Johnson, needs $20,000 a month. Johnson testified over the phone as to why she does need that amount.
The $20,000 you requested, was that fairly typical for how much the two of you would spend on a month-to-month basis?
Yes, that's pretty much what we both would spend monthly. Sometimes it would be more.
For food, you've indicated that you need $7,214.29 for food per month.
Per month.
And that's solely for you?
This is for me, and sometimes I cook for my sisters as well.
Now, you've also indicated that you need $6,000 a month for higher help, correct?
That is correct.
Johnson regularly posts updates about her pregnancy on Twitter. She says she can't play basketball and earn income because she's pregnant with twins and her doctor has declared it high risk. The babies are due February 1st. She's asking for temporary spousal support until the start of the next WNBA season.
Would you have $20,000 a month from your income at the WNBA to pay her?
No.
Okay.
Okay, this is a whole can of worms. It is. With same-sex marriage rulings across the country, this is now, very much in the queue. What do you do about divorces? Is it seen the same under the law? Is it?
It's absolutely the same now.
No difference.
No difference. We had a prohibition for a long period of time on our book saying that you could not, those marriages were void, the same-sex marriages. Of course, the U.S. Supreme Court has overruled that for all states. So now same-sex marriages are treated just like any other marriage. If you have a same-sex couple, we go in and we determine custody, spousal maintenance, division of property, exactly the same.
Even if there's this artificial insemination business that goes on to have kids, because the other person is not biologically part of that mix.
That's an interesting issue. The law really hasn't totally caught up with society. And in this area, I think there's going to be a lot of law that needs to be made. But in this Brittany Griner situation, I don't know anything about the details or the real facts, but assuming that she got pregnant with the consent of her spouse, and assuming that they both understood that, I'm going to carry the child and the other person is going to be a participating parent, well, then it's no different than any heterosexual relationship.
How about the fact that they were married for only, I think it was 22 or 32 days?
Well, that won't affect child support or child custody, but that will definitely affect spousal maintenance, the claim she's making for $20,000 a month. I don't want to speculate too much, but I would really be shocked if any judge was going to order that type of support for a less than a 1-month marriage.
Do you agree?
I would agree. We have certain standards within Arizona that you have to meet in order to qualify for spousal maintenance. And 28 days of a marriage is really not the kind of long-term marriage that we're looking at to provide support for.
That is really interesting. We're back with Robert Schwartz and Maurine Pontrelli from Dickinson Wright, noted divorce attorneys. Back in a moment on Newsmaker Sunday. Some final thoughts. Final minute of Newsmaker Sunday with Robert Schwartz and Maurine Pontrelli, noted defense attorneys in town with Dickinson Wright.
Divorce lawyers.
Did I say defense? I said defense again. I always want to say that. It just rolls off the tongue.
Well, what we do can be criminal sometimes.
Right.
Well, and you really do take a defensive attitude towards your clients in a divorce, so
right.
I think you probably have pegged it correctly.
Final moments I want to get from each of you, just about 20 seconds. What's the lesson in Ashley Madison, Robert?
If people think that there's anything such as privacy, they are delusional. There is no such thing as privacy any longer. Anything you put on the internet is there forever. It's not going to go away. It's not going to be deleted, even if someone tells you it's going to be deleted.
And discoverable.
And it is discoverable.
Maurine, final thoughts, because we're in a changing world right now.
Same thing. If you think you're going to have an affair and you're doing it over the internet and you're meeting someone that way, there's really no difference in terms of your lack of privacy than if you went down the street and tried to meet somebody that way as well.
No different, except it's just easier.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And it's documented.
Yes. Thank you both. Great to see you again. Thank you for your becoming regulars on Newsmaker Sunday. We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.